Okay, cool. Hi guys. Hi. Nice to see so many faces. Packed room is awesome. Like Logan mentioned, been in the startup ecosystem for a really long time. I've lived all over the world. I've lived in the Middle East, Toronto, Miami, and now Vegas. Thank you. Thank you. So I've been here for a year and a half, trying to get really involved in the startup ecosystem. Like most people, like got an opportunity to work from home. So why not be in an ecosystem that is supporting entrepreneurs so much and be involved in the ecosystem? So I've been in the space for about 10 years. I've worked at multiple venture-backed startups. I've been on the venture side. So I was at a venture fund for 2.5 years, supporting 250 early startups, predominantly B2B SaaS. And my final move was into consumer tech. And so now I'm in the space of consumer fintech, consulting a ton of startups that are doing some really awesome stuff. Like Logan mentioned again, huge advocate of like underrepresented founders, but more importantly, also financial inclusion and making sure that financial resources can be available to everybody. So that's one of the projects I'm working on now. I'm pretty excited about it. And within all of those things that I've done, one of the things that inherently came up is community. I didn't realize it at the time. There wasn't really a term for it, but even when I was at a startup, when I was at a venture fund, and now even consulting, one of the things that I naturally did was build communities around myself. And now it's actually a hot topic and a buzzword in the venture community. And so just wanted to talk a little bit more about that and explain like how you guys as entrepreneurs, maybe, working at a startup, maybe starting your own business, can really leverage that to grow your business. And so I think the best way to do it is really do a little bit of a history lesson. And so you guys might know this already, but I thought this would be good context for everybody else that is coming in new. One of the first ways that people found, one of the OG ways of like building growth for your business is called sales-led growth. Put your hand up if you ever heard that term. Yeah, a few people. I'm sure all of you guys will know it when I explain it. Sales-led growth means you have a sales team. It means the number one way that you make money is by having salespeople go out, whether it's door to door. I know if you guys live in Nevada, since I moved here, so many salespeople all the time. Internet, fiber optic, solar, yes, I can. And so that's really the original way that people make money, right? Like every other company you can think of back in the day, that was the way that they predominantly sold. They would have people go door to door, or you would show up to their store and they'd have a salespeople present something to you. So this method is still very, very popular, still very prominent in a lot of businesses. The thing is, it's also very expensive. To hire the salespeople, you have to pay them, you have to give them commission, you have to have the resources to have them go door to door. That's very expensive. And so some companies are coming up with creative ideas around this. It's also a very top-down approach. When you think about back in the day, corporate salespeople would go to the CEO, they'd go to the CTO, and they would convince them to buy this software or this product or this service. And then those people would go down and tell the end user, hey, you're going to use that. And so that caused a little bit of friction, right? How come I'm the one that's going to be using the software and I wasn't involved in the process? And so it's what we call a funnel-based approach. So I'm sure if you guys have ever worked in sales, you love funnels. So what funnels mean? So what I'll talk to the stage really quick is basically customers that have never heard of you go in the top of the funnel, and customers that pay for your products are at the bottom of the funnel. So here they learn about your product, here they're considering your product, they're interested, then they make the decision, and then they buy. And so this is how a lot of organizations thought about sales. We're changing that a little bit nowadays, but there's still a few companies that are really good examples of using this in a great way. Number one is Salesforce. If you guys have ever heard of them, it's in their name, so they love sales. They have a huge sales team, right? They pay those people lots of commissions. They have these huge conferences. I think they sponsor like half the stuff that happens in Vegas. I see their name all the time. It's still great for them. Why? Because they're a complicated product. I'm not going to know how to use Salesforce if I just go to their website right now. I need somebody to walk me through it. I need a consultant, I need a salesperson to tell me, hey, here are all the different things you can do for this type of business. You want this with this add-on and this add-on. That's super complex. They're never going to change their mind unless we supply any products. Next is Xerox. I use this because everybody thinks about it, right? The door-to-door salesman, like you need a copier, you need a scanner, convincing people that they need those products. That is a really good example as well. So that's a little bit of history on sales-led growth. The next iteration, particularly in tech startups, is something called product-led growth. Raise your hands if you've heard of that term. Yeah, a good, more than the sales led growth. Probably because you guys are coming to Southern Nevada. Product-led growth is a little bit different in that instead of the salespeople, the product is selling for you. So a lot of people in the past 5 to 10 years got really excited by that, where they were like, oh, I don't have to hire anybody. No, that's not what that means. Okay. It means that your product is doing a little bit more of the work. You get a little bit more scalable, right? You can sell faster and cheaper. And so why this happened is because consumers all of a sudden, particularly B2B, got accustomed to really nice products. All of us use social media. All of us use Instagram. We use Netflix. That interface, beautiful. You ever use a software in an office 20 years ago? Don't try it. You will quit that day. And so because employees started using these products that are so easy to use, they became a little spoiled, right? They wanted that for all of their products. And so they expect their product to be that high power. With sales-led growth, salesperson selling you. With product-led growth, your friend is selling you. Somebody uses it and they tell you about it. Your coworker uses it and tells you about it. And so all of a sudden we're shifting from salesperson that maybe I don't necessarily trust. You have to build that trust. It's a longer sales cycle to your buddy, right? You tell me about it. Okay, I know you, Adam, whatever. Like I'm gonna buy the product because I believe, and I know that you're not selling me because you don't get anything out of it. So common approaches. I thought we'd cover this really quick, even though I love product-led growth, but this is really interesting. It's what approaches they use. One is called viral loops. Viral loops are basically when somebody signs up, it makes the product better to have their friends sign up to. So social media, I'll talk about a few examples later, but basically it's creating a loop where they're convincing more and more people to sign up to make their lives easier. Second is freemium, right? All of you guys have probably used those apps where it's like free, and then you love it, and then you're like, oh, I reached the limit, I gotta upgrade, and then they get you, right? That's called bottoms-up approach. So last we talked about like the executive selling down. Now we're talking about people, the end user in particular, using the product and then selling up and saying, hey, I love this product. Everyone else around me should use it. All my coworkers should use it. The executives should use it. And so developers love this because they're like, I build a really good product. I'm putting viral loops and it's freemium, whatever. I can convince the end user to be my internal champion and sell it to the CEO instead of going and finding an in with the CEO and selling it down. And so what this led to is instead of a funnel, we're now using something called a flywheel. And a flywheel means, the person learns about your product, they engage with the product, right? Probably freemium, they use it for free. They buy, and then they tell other people about it. And then those people learn about your product. So all of a sudden, you're not just kind of getting rid of customers where you're like, okay, you bought my product, thank you very much, next. You're actually telling them, hey, stick around, tell other people about it. Like, we love that. So really good example that I think will help like solidify some of this information. Calendly. How did you guys learn about Calendly? Somebody sent you a link and then you were like, this is amazing. I got to use it too. It's free. And then, you want to like, you want the nicer Calendly and you got to pay for it. Other example, Asana, Trello, Monday.com, any sort of productivity software, you use it to make yourself more productive, right? You have your to-do list. You have your projects on there, and then you go and you tell your buddy in the cubicle next to you or on Slack or whatever it is, you tell them like, hey, have you heard of Asana? And then everybody in the department starts using it, and guess what? You reach your limit, and the company has to start paying for it. And finally, also good example, Slack. Slack, I'm pretty sure all of the communities around tech have Slack. You join them, you're like, this is amazing. I get to chat, I get to post, I get to automate some of my processes. And so if you get enough people on your team to join, they start erasing your messages. And you're like, oh no, I need those messages. It's my job. And you have to start paying for it. So that's really what product-led growth is. Really hot topic the last 5 to 10 years. But so what we're here for today, community-led growth, is kind of this like next iteration. It isn't necessarily mutually exclusive from product-led growth, but it's a layer on top is how I like to think about it. So if you think about community-led growth, the community is building around your product, your business, or your industry. And so what happens is instead of, right, initially we had the salesperson selling you. Then we had the product selling you, or your friend selling you. This iteration is actually crowdsourcing their recommendation. Why would I listen to one of my friends when I can ask 10,000 people what I think about this product? And not just 10,000 people, well, 1,000 of those people are in the exact same boat as I am. I can find out what company they work at, what industry, how it works for them, how they use it to better themselves. And so all of a sudden you're crowdsourcing all of this data and you're like, yes, this makes sense for me, or this makes sense for me. It increases the value to the customer pre-purchase, because not only are they learning about your product, they're meeting other people that are in the same industry as them, other people that have the exact same problem they're trying to solve it. And it creates a really strong feedback loop for you as a company, because if you're in that community, you can see what they're saying about you. What if they're saying your product doesn't work? Or what if they're saying, actually, I found an alternative use case that you could market that you didn't even think about. And so you get all of this instant feedback from all of these people. And so it's not that we moved away from the flywheel, it's that we added all of these different layers onto it. When they learn about your product, they're getting social proof. They see all of these different people using it. They're, getting pre-sales answers. You're saving money because you don't have to answer their questions. They're asking it on this community and they're getting that feedback instantaneously, probably faster than you can do it yourself. You're getting product feedback when they acquire, customer to customer support, self-service, customer education, like all of this free stuff. And then advocacy, the really big one, right? You're getting referrals and network effects. You're getting testimonials. You're getting authentic stuff that's going from customer to customer. So I have a few examples of companies that do this really well, and I tried to pick different companies so that you can kind of start to see how it works in different spaces. My favorite one is Sephora. So good. One of the strongest communities that exist. If y'all haven't been on Sephora and you're interested in community-led growth, go onto their website. What they have done is they have built up, well, first of all, they have multiple communities. They have an influencer community. That's another strategy. I'm going to focus on their customer community. What they did is they built a point-based system where if you post a photo of yourself using all of their products and you tag their products, you get points to be able to then purchase products. So what happens is all of a sudden you have people from all over the world posting photos of themselves using a product in unconventional ways, stacking them on top of each other, using 8 to 12 products a photo, and you're teaching people how to use it, how it works, giving all this feedback, and other people can like and comment on that photo. And so these people feel like they're part of this community where they're teaching each other. Sephora does not do anything. Sephora's just sitting there, cashing it in, getting bought up by LVMH. And so that's a really good example of like a customer-facing community where they're like, we're going to give you this little thing, right? The value they give you is the points. Sephora people love points. And they know that. And so they gave them more points. In return, they give them educational content, influencer content, product usage, knowledge, all of this in return. Next example is public.com. Public.com, for those that aren't familiar, it's very similar to Robinhood. It's a day trading platform, or they don't like that term. It's a long-term investing platform. And so if you guys invest, buy stocks, what do you guys see when you first open the app? What's the first thing you see? Portfolio, right? You see the stock price for the day, you see how it's gone up, how it's gone down, nice grabs, so many grabs, right? Very investor heavy. Public.com, you open their app, first thing you see is what people are saying about the stocks. Their whole thing is we make you, I think their slogan is we make you a better investor. Not by investing yourself and learning from yourself, but because every time you log into our app, you get to see what everybody else is saying about the stocks that are in your portfolio. Did you hear about the quarterly call? Oh my God. They're doing this. The CEO lost it. He's talking about a growth strategy that doesn't make any sense. Other people are like, are you seeing the war in Ukraine? That's going to impact all of our oil stocks. All of these people automatically doing the work for you, educating other consumers for you. A slogan like we make you a better investor is such a strong sell, because all of a sudden, first of all, the government is not even doing it. They're making other people do the work for them, but they're building a community, and all of a sudden, what do you feel like? You feel like you're a hardcore investor, right? You're there. I'm learning every single day. I go to my friends outside of the app. Guess what I learned today? Did you see the stock price? Do you know what the Ukraine war is doing to this? Like all of a sudden you have all this extra information that you can share with people. So they really leverage their community in an incredibly smart way. A third really strong example, YC, Y Combinator, really strong, one of the largest accelerator programs in the world. venture capital is a very competitive space. People don't think of it that way, but because venture capitalists are giving the money away, so everyone's like, oh, that's so easy. But the reality is, venture capitalists need the startups to say yes to them. They need to make sure people know their brand. For the startups that are, running companies that are doing really well, they can be picky with the venture capitalists if they choose to work with them. So what's the value that you're giving me? YC started something called Y Startups Holding. If you are running a startup, I recommend you sign up. They give you all of these free resources. On top of that, they make you go through a course. And every time you finish a course, you get access to more and more of their community. So what they're doing is they're making sure you're a legitimate founder. They're beefing up their pipeline for investments. And all they have to do is give you the resources that they already have and connect you to all of the other founders. So now you have this huge repository of founders from all over the world that are working on products that might be complementary. You might partner, you might whatever. So they're building this sort of like B2B community of startup founders. Really, really fun. And then the last one, I actually just picked this logo. I don't know whose logo this is, but I just picked this logo. When I worked in venture capital, I specifically worked with B2B SaaS companies. B2B SaaS means business to business, startup as a software as a subscription. And what that means is they're not Sephora, right? They're not public.com. They're not going to everyday people and trying to get us to buy from them. A little bit harder to build a community, right? When it's enterprises. And so one of the things we've always talked about is building an early adopters program. If you're starting a business and you have your 5 first customers, go to those 5 customers and say, hey, do you want to be part of an exclusive early adopters community? This is for customers that I handpicked because I think they're experts in their field. I think you're a thought leader. I think the content that you're producing is amazing. I want you to be part of this community. You're going to get together with other thought leaders that are in your space. You're going to learn from each other. And you're also going to give me feedback on my products. And you're probably also going to like me so much, and I built so much trust with you, that you're going to tell your friends and also the industry about me and about my early adopters community. And so this is actually one of the things I did when I was in venture. Our team worked on building a community of Fortune 500 CEOs because our startups needed customers. And the best way to do that is to build a community of executives and connect them with our startups and say, hey, do you want to give them feedback? Do you want to be part of this community? It makes you an early adopter. That means you're one of the first 5% that try this product. And so really good examples, Sephora and Public on the consumer front, particularly retail, YC, so how you can build a community with startups, and then early adopters. Really, any B2B company can do that with their enterprise clients or with their SMB clients, whoever you're selling to. So, talk a little bit about value. I think community, obviously I'm talking about the topics, obviously I think it makes sense. But I think that community-led growth is so important because it does something really special that a lot of the other growth strategies struggle with. And the side note, the growth strategies I talked about aren't the only ones. Those are just like the hottest ones that have been talked about in the past few years, so I want to mention them. There's a whole bunch of other growth strategies. But the reason community-led growth, I believe, has a really special advantage is because it adds so much value to both sides. When you're a salesperson, I worked in sales, and talked a lot about consultative selling. And one of the biggest things is you add value before you take value. So what you do as a really good salesperson, I monitor the best salespeople. I always notice they would give more information than they get. They would show up to the first meeting, don't pitch at all. Show up, be like, hey, what's your business? Oh, interesting. I've actually met 12 other businesses just like that. What's your product? What are you struggling with? Half of the businesses I talk to are struggling with the exact thing. You know what they've tried? They've tried these 3 things. Maybe you should try that. Nothing to do with the product. Next meeting, did you try those 3 things? Did they work? Oh, only one worked? You know what else? Let's try this. And actually, you know what does that really well? My product. And they added that value, like they gave them that context of like, here's what I'm an expert. Here's what I know. I'm going to give that to you. A show of faith trust, right? Building that relationship. And so that translated to product-led growth, right? Product growth, they gave away a little bit of their product. They gave away a little freemium, right? Get a little taste of the product. Here's some value. Now you know what we offer. Upgrade. Pay the subscription. Pay the software fee. And then finally, with community, it's all about like folks in your community, like I personally believe you should never push them to buy from you. Have them be part of your community, because even if they don't buy, they can convince somebody else to buy. They can be a champion for you. They can be whatever you need in that sense to your growth target. And so there's really a community values exchange that's happening, right? There's something that the customers are getting, and there's something that you're getting. And it depends on the community. So there's a lot of different ways you can do it. So I try to like put the biggest ones here, but a little bit later, I'll talk about like how to break it down. So the value to customers is number one, excitement and belonging. It's like kind of what we talked about early adopters council. Like, oh, I'm a thought leader. You think I'm an expert in my field? That's really cool. I'm really proud of that. I can put it on my LinkedIn. I'm excited to meet all of these other experts or all of these other or all these other startups. Unbiased recommendations. I talked about that. Now you're not just getting recommendations from a salesperson that you might not necessarily trust. You're getting it from an integrated community. Product knowledge, how to use the product, access to the company. Interestingly, feedback loops are also valuable to the customer, right? A lot of times as businesses, we think, oh, it helps me because I can make my product better. But people want to tell you what's wrong with your product because they like your product and they want to keep using it. And so they want access to you. Community shared resources. People are always sharing, particularly like YC Startup School, right? Here's the deck I used. Here's the financial model template. And then you get to improve your personal brand if you're part of it. Like if you're Sephora ambassador, you get to say you're a Sephora ambassador. If you're B2B thought leader, that's what you get as well. And then value to the company. So again, all things I've already mentioned, but to make it a little bit succinct, you get the word of mouth. You get to decrease your cost of customer acquisition, right? It usually costs you what, $50 to get a customer on Facebook. That's expensive and that's not scalable, right? Now all the startups are running away from like paid social because it's getting too expensive. And so you get to create a community that might not necessarily take that much capital to start or to like nurture, and you're decreasing your cost of acquisition. You also get retention and loyalty. They know you're listening, you're collecting their feedback, they understand who you are as a company. You get their trust because you're getting recommendations from other people that aren't incentivized to sell to them. You're increasing your revenue. You're also increasing your lifetime value of that customer because now I got all these Sephora points that I got to spend and I'm going to stay a loyal customer. And take some time and think about the values exchange and make sure that it's even, if not more positive on the customer side, because that's when they really trust you and they feel like they're part of this community and they're getting a lot out of it and they'll stick around. And so why now? Why is this getting popular now? Like, why not still product-led growth, right? Number one, I feel like we're talking about this a lot. Everyone's isolated. I haven't been in a room this big in a long time. Like, I am starved for human interaction, and a lot of people are, right? And why is that? You know, COVID, work from home, everyone moved to a different city. I did. There's reduced in real life communities. We don't talk about this a lot, but like, people aren't really part of their neighborhood community anymore. There used to be like, you know, barbecues everyone shows up to every week. There used to be churches, there used to be organizations that you're part of. That's not a thing anymore. And so people are looking for a way to connect, whether that's a product or a service, or maybe, you know, something as fun as makeup or art. Second is values. Gen Z is making this very known, but a lot of people are realizing their money matters, just like their vote, right? If you want a company to change, show them with your money. If they're doing good things, give them money. If they're not, and they don't align with your values, don't. And so this kind of like purpose-based spending is getting really, really big. And finally, fundraising. Y'all want to fundraise? So venture capitalists are looking for growth channels that are scalable, and that you can't just say it's Facebook anymore, right? Back in the day, you could raise $20 million by saying, hey, my go-to-market strategy is Facebook. And now it's like, yeah, how are you gonna win on that word? Like, what words are you using for Google ads? Everybody's competing for the exact same things. There's no way you're gonna win in that market. It's gonna be incredibly expensive. And there's so many privacy laws now, which is a great thing. Don't get me wrong, love it. But because of all these privacy laws, you're not bidding on specific people anymore. You're bidding on something very big and very generic. And so now, as a startup, as an early stage company, you're bidding against all of these conglomerates, and then you're not going to win. And so finding this like alternative growth that can help you, whether it's product-led growth, whether it's community, whether it's something else that's slowly created, is going to be your advantage when you go out and raise from investors. So how do you do it? Long list. No, there's a lot of different ways you can do it. This is just my opinion, but I think obviously number one is think through your strategy and execution plan. Does it even make sense for you to have a community? You know, if you're Salesforce, actually I think they do have a community, but if you're something as complicated as Salesforce, your primary growth strategy isn't going to be community. It's going to be sales because you need those people to walk the customers through the journey. If you're Asana, and they can also, I feel like I'm just very convinced on community strategy. But think through who your customers are, right? What value can they get out of it? Will they really stick around? Do they care enough? How do you build that excitement? Will it be based on your products, like Sephora, or will it be YC, where it's not based on the product, it's based on startups. We're this innovative ecosystem, right? And you bring people there, but you own the community. So you have all the emails, you're seeing what they're saying. Think through, like, if it actually, and then after thinking about the customer, think about if it makes sense for you. If it's going to cost you money, you're not really going to grow from it. Probably understand, right? What type of community? Is it knowledge and learning? Are they like all experts in their field sharing? Is it events-based? People are need interaction, right? Does it make sense for them to come out and see your business? Is it membership? What type of community do you want to have? Then think about what would bring your customers together. Do they want to change a specific problem, right? Maybe that's very political. Maybe they want to talk about like a change that they want to see. Maybe they have a problem that they need solved. Whatever it is that they're struggling with and you think you can solve, like that's where you tap into that community. Who will run it? You have to hire somebody? Like, do you have to start spending money? Or do you think there are going to be natural leaders that arise out of it? Right? Sephora, great job, natural leaders. People love posting photos of themselves. We learned from Instagram. So now we're using that. And now they can also share what makeup products they use. And where will it live? Is it on social media? Is it on Slack? Is it on your products? Like, think about like what makes it. Will people want to download your app to be on this community, or do they want to live on somewhere that they're already existing, right? Maybe it's a Reddit community. Maybe it's somewhere else that's already got a community, so you're piggybacking off of it. Second, again, super big, understand the values exchange. What are they getting out of it? What are you getting out of it? Is it really valuable? Sometimes I feel like I've heard a lot of people talk about values exchange and they don't necessarily understand their customer. So I would say bring customers into the conversation. Find out what they like. Maybe they all don't want to do it. 3, set clear goals out of everything. I feel like this is like inherently implied. Just make sure that you have goals so that you're not 1 year in and you're like, wait, what's happening in this community? Did anything come out of it? No, be specific. Do you want to see real growth, or do you want it to be organic and create it and leave it? And if something happens, doesn't, that's fine. That's a goal too. But I would like encourage you to be a little bit more specific about your goals and make sure that you know if it's been successful or not come a year, 2 years from now. Launch. Launch the community. And then of course, after launch, test, iterate, get feedback. Luckily, feedback loops are pretty strong in communities. You can iterate as quickly as you want. You can do it every day, do it every week, do it every month. But yeah, you can just make sure that it makes sense, and particularly as things change, right? What if there's another COVID and you can't have events? What if they don't like your product? What if your product doesn't make sense anymore? Peloton. What are you gonna do? Sell on Amazon? Sell the bikes for $2. And so you gotta be like, you gotta change it up, and you gotta make sure that. And actually, Peloton, that's a good example. They love it. They love being part of like that network. So yeah, you just have to be iterative and make sure that you're adapting to the market. That's the case for every business, but I thought I would mention. But yeah, that is it. Thanks.
All right, well, questions from the crowd. Faye, if you could just repeat the question back to Mike, those online.
Yes, yeah, go ahead.
Yep, in the traditional model, as you mentioned, the traditional growth models keep statistics on, for example, how many followers on social media. So in the community growth, how do you document your quote unquote followers so it's attractive and it looks like it's scalable?
Do you mean how do you keep track of your own metrics, or how do you showcase it to investors or stockholders?
The second question.
Okay. So the question was, oh, this is like a good test. So the question was, how do you track your metrics and make it appealing for investors or external folks to know that your community is well? I don't know what I'm looking down. That's a great question. So it depends how you're running your community, right? If it's a social media community where they're all followers on Instagram, you already have those numbers. If it's a Slack community, which is really big, right? I'm sure a lot of you guys are on like innovation communities on Slack. You can see the members on there. You have to realize what your end goal is. So my goal is to have this be my primary growth channel. So that means I need to see 10,000 people convert to customers within 1 year. Let's say that's your goal, right? You have to work backwards and find the metrics that make the most sense for it. I'm sure metrics for communities will become more like streamlined in the future. People like sales, right? Everybody knows exactly the same sales metrics. But for communities, because they're a little bit different for every community, you have to find the right metrics for you. So I would say work backwards. If that's your goal for how many people you want to sign up, then say, okay, I assume that I need 100,000 members of my community to convert 10,000 because I think it's going to be a 10% conversion. And as you work with every month, you check in on those metrics. Say, actually, we're seeing that it's 5% conversion. So that means our goal for 100,000 is going to work. We're going to need to hit 200,000, and you readjust that goal until you like do it enough that it becomes that you have the data to back up your assumptions.
So you previously mentioned, you said launch. How do you initiate launch for a community? How do you start? How do you trigger?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the question was, how do you launch your community? Again, it goes back to like what kind of community you want to start. When I was at Forum Ventures Venture Fund, we started a community of Fortune 500 executives, right? We tried to get like 50 before we launched because we didn't want them to be on Slack. It would be like 3 guys on Slack, right? Talking to each other. So we said, hey, we're launching a community in a few months, but let's invite you to a few events. So we're actually having this pitch event. It's for InsurTech, and you run insurance, you're a CTO of insurance company. Why don't you come to that event? So we had to do a lot of manual work to keep engaging them until the community could launch. So it depends what your strategy is. If it's social media, sadly, it's public, right? So for one of the communities that actually we're running right now, people can see it. We only have 90 followers. So we're like, hey, don't worry, it's growing. Then you got to engage them in different ways, right? We have events, we bring people out, and we're like, trying to promote our social media accounts that people sign up. So appearances are really important. And when you do launch, you have to be very cognizant to launch in a way that makes sense for you, that doesn't turn people off. Because if they sign up and then remember the values box, and they're not seeing any of that value because no one's in that community, they're not going to be engaged. They're going to be the first people to jump ship. And so you want to launch strategically. Sometimes you have to take a risk, right? Sometimes you have to say, hey, we're launching in 3 months. You better hustle and get 100 people on here in 3 months. Otherwise, we're going to launch for fun.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Talk a lot about the advantages of strategy. What are some challenges that online success encounter and be recommended challenges?
Yeah. So the question was, we talked a lot about opportunities for community-led growth. How do we mitigate the challenges and the risks associated with it? That's a really good question. So, I'm thinking back to all the people, right? A lot. There's a lot that can go wrong. First and foremost, you might realize that this is not a good strategy. Maybe people don't care about when they're selling, right? Maybe you're like, I don't know, something very technical. Like, I was going to say geology. For some reason, geologists are always very engaged in topics. Maybe that's it. But maybe it's something that's like very technical, and the people that are buying it are doing it because they have to. Maybe it's a risk investment, right? Maybe it's insurance. Like, folks aren't going to come in the community and be like, hey, let's all buy lemonade insurance. Like, they're buying it because they got it. And so maybe you start this community because you're excited about it, particularly if you're the founder. You meet a lot of founders, they're very excited about the topics they're selling, but not necessarily exciting to the people they're selling to or the mass public. And so you can find out that it doesn't work for you. So setting the clear goals and iterating is really important, because if you set that goal and you iterate and you see that it's not working, better off shutting down, especially if you're investing a lot into it. I can give you an example of the community that I started for the venture capital community. We started the community as a paid membership. Because we were like, the value is so strong, and if they pay, they'll be more committed to the membership. And that's like a lot of times when you hear in communities, you make them pay, even if it's like $5, $10, or like in enterprise communities, usually, like, have you guys ever joined, like, you know, I used to be in like chief of staff collective, just all the chief of staffs and the tech companies get together and talk about strategy, right? I remember they charged $500 a year. And I was like, I don't want to pay that. But then I told them I don't want to pay. And they sent me a 1-page paper that said, hey, here's the best way to convince your CEO to pay for this. Okay, they iterated. They found out that the biggest hesitation to join their community was money. They found a way for somebody else to pay for them. So like, we struggled with that as well. It's like, do people find enough value to want to pay for something like this? And eventually we started charging, and at the end of the year it wasn't working, and we renewed everybody as free. And everybody knew it was just free as well, because we realized they were already very engaged. We didn't need them to pay, and the willingness to pay was stopping a lot of people that could act up. And so that iteration is like so important. We hit those roadblocks, those challenges. Any other questions? Oh, yeah.
So say from a community approach, what is a good way to like build partnerships, for example? Like say someone thinks a startup would benefit from what they do, whether it's HR or like cybersecurity and privacy, but just to initiate that conversation.
Oh my God, I love partnerships, especially sponsors, anybody that can make you more money. Communities, this is actually a huge thing I feel like I left out. So this is a great question. I will repeat. The question is, how can you initiate conversations with partners that might benefit from your community? This is huge. If there is somebody that could benefit from the community that you built, and they are not a direct or indirect competitor, it's a huge revenue stream for you. Actually, one of the communities that I'm building right now is called Young Professionals of Color. It brings people together to talk about, things that they face in the workplace. And the community has 500 members. And we realized that that's a huge community that people want to tap into. One of our next events, the Democrats of Nevada are coming out to them, right? Because they realize that, hey, we want voters, we're going to come out to your events. We are getting sponsored by Black-owned businesses, because they realize that people of color in the community might want to support within the community, right? And so those partnerships are huge. I've heard of some really, really successful ones, like where what they will do is they will either, we did this also on the venture capital side. We had the executive community I talked about, but we also ran another community of our actual founders, right? So we gave them money and we want them to be successful. So what do? We want to provide them with resources. And one of the best ways to provide resources is to have them connect with lawyers, accountants, MarTech software, any sort of Rex, business cards, whatever. All of those businesses are willing to pay you to get FaceTime with those people. Why? Because they're qualified leads. They're people that make sense for you, especially when it's very niche community, right? That's why YC does it too. You see on the YC's website, here are our partners. HubSpot. Like HubSpot's paying you hundreds of thousands of dollars to be your sponsor. Why? Because they want those founders to use them as their marketing platform. So starting the conversations is not easy, but it's as simple as following a regular sales process. So if you meet with a salesperson, you run the same cadence on them, right? Initially, like, find somebody to the door for you, or do a cold outreach, negotiate the partnership that you want, and then again, set goals and iterate. Say, hey, pay me 10 grand a year to have access to this partnership. What I promise you is access to them. You get one-on-one meetings with them. You get a list of their emails. You can email them. Whatever it is that you want to offer that isn't too invasive of your community. And then track it and go back to your partner and say, hey, is it working? And if it is working, like, maybe 10 grand was too little. Maybe we need to negotiate for next year and set new targets. So yeah, partnership is a huge way. Like, once you build that community, a lot of people are going to want in because you built something very organic that they trust. You also have to take care not to ruin that trust, right? You don't want to be bombarding them with partners. Like, hey, sign up for this, sign up for that. But if it makes sense for them and it adds value, like for us, the venture fund, we partner with Brex and HubSpot. Every single company needs a credit card. When you sign up through us, Brex gave us an offer. No fees for a lifetime. Pretty good offer, right? So every single company that was with us signed up with them. So we had metrics. Same thing with HubSpot. Hey, do you need a marketing software? You're gonna need to email, right? You're gonna need to nurture. Sign up with HubSpot. Their offer is the first year free, second year 90% off, third year. But not bad for the first 2 years, huh? And so again, the value is extreme. Yeah. Any other questions?
There are no questions from the online audience. Everyone, thanks so much for coming out one more time. Thanks.